Hi there, everyone. My name is Alok Pattani, and I'm a data science developer advocate at Google Cloud. I'm grateful to be back for the second straight year of the Postech Sport AIX conference. This year, I'm going to talk to you about innovating the MLB fan experience through data. Google Cloud and Major League Baseball, or MLB, have a multi-year partnership in which we're going to use data and technology to help innovate and personalize the baseball fan experience. So taking a step back, Major League Baseball, the largest North American professional baseball league, is a technology-forward organization that uses many cloud tools for working with baseball data and creating their own products, fan-facing products in a lot of cases. And a large focus of this partnership is a particular product called StatCast, which is MLB player and ball tracking technology that's existed since about 2015 that collects and that is the technology is collecting and analyzing a massive amount of data of the players on the field. So each of the players is tracked by multiple cameras and the ball, and as of the last couple of years, they even have more advanced tracking where it's not just a single dot of the player, but their limbs, the position of their shoulders, their knees, various points on their body, which gets at really, really interesting baseball dynamics and is a level of data that you haven't really seen before in baseball. So what we're going to focus a little bit more on is the fan experience, right? So, there's Major League Baseball has millions of fans around both in the United States and around the world. And how can we reach those fans in different ways as their needs change, as technology changes, as the ways fans follow the game evolves over time? So we're going to talk about three different sort of projects that have come out of this partnership, a couple that I've worked on closely to kind of discuss how are ways where we can actually use this data and technology to drive better outcomes. One is about automated game notes, which is a project where we added context to StatCast data to generate insights at scale. Another was a project to understand digital engagement with MLB players. So we used Kaggle, which I'll go into a little bit, to crowdsource analysis around this topic. And then the third product is MLB Film Room, a really cool video search library that's available to MLB fans to find videos of all sorts of things going back several years, their favorite players, games, and things like that. So we'll go into more detail. Let's start off with, like I said, this project of automated game notes. This is a project that I was very involved in the 2020 baseball season, which is, of course, shortened due to COVID, but was a really interesting year to work on a content scaling project. So to give you some background, MLB has what are called game notes. So a single Major League Baseball season, at least a full season like the one we had recently, has about 2,500 games if you include the playoffs. And baseball historically is a very numbers-oriented game. So there are many, many statistics that people use to describe the players and teams that participate in the game. And broadcasters, writers, other people who generate content like to use these notes to drive to highlight players, to talk about storylines in the game. This is a really good pitcher going against a really good batter or something like that. And these game notes have existed for many years. You can see the images on the right show some things that are from the MLB team at the bottom here. And then there's game notes that teams provide to sort of as a press for the press to focus on the game as well. But these are mostly manually created. And they're very good, but what usually happens is that manual creation takes time and is not automated, so you may only create a few notes. So the project here was to automate the creation of game notes, at least some types of game notes, to increase the scale and efficiency so you can get more notes for more games. So the one type of note that we really focused on for this sort of proof of concept was what's called a leaderboard game note. So I'm going to show the game note that we had in the last one, which you look at the bottom, is that this particular pitcher, Framber Valdez of the Astros, ranked first in the 2020 season with 61 strikeouts on curveballs. This was a note that was prepared in advance of their playoff game against the Rays. Again, this was in 2020 in October. What you'll notice here is this is about a particular player and a particular statistic, but the format of this note is very generalizable. If you take out the statistic part, you can see strikeouts on curveballs, but this could easily be home runs of a certain distance. This says the 2020 season, but this could easily be the last 5 seasons maybe. In some cases, the note focuses on players, but it could easily focus on teams. You might have something about their Astros in general. And then it could be about pitching, but you can also think of the same stat being on the hitting side. How a player has struck out many times on curveballs in this case. So there's from other things, and how what makes it interesting is the last one here you'll see. So it makes it interesting in the top 5. This person ranked 250th on strikeouts on curveballs. It's probably not as interesting of a note. So by kind of looking at this pattern and exploiting these things, we can create a mapping where you can do this for multiple statistics, players and teams, multiple time spans, and create many, many notes. And again, look at that relevance and interesting criteria to figure out which notes should actually surface. So to get a little bit into the technical details, right? So what we start with is raw MLB data, again, collected by StatCast. And what you see here is this is very sort of granular. It talks about the pitch in particular, where did it start, the speed of the pitch, where did it end in the strike zone, and some other parts of the trajectory along the way. So that's fairly raw, but we want to get to this note that talks about this player on a certain pitch type in context. So you'll see a screenshot here, but there's a lot of work done to ingest this using a Google Cloud tool called Dataflow into BigQuery, another tool where we do a bunch of transformations of the data to create these sorts of notes. As you can see here, it not only says Framber Valdez ranked first in the 2020 season, but it gives you the context of the other players who ranked around him in there, and it highlights his name. So again, this is a note that copies exactly the manual note, but this was generated automatically, which means that you could generate it every day, you could generate it for multiple stats, and as we said, a really true scaling process for these types of notes. So again, we're going over some of the details here, but by creating these notes and creating a scoring system, as you'll see here, we have the ability to generate up to a couple hundred notes by the time the playoffs came. We have lots of statistics. We have regular season statistics. We have postseason statistics. We have 2 teams in a game. And then you can score them based on different criteria. How interesting is the note? How popular is the player? How popular is the team? How relevant is the team? All these sorts of things. And then we created what's a Data Studio dashboard. So Data Studio, another cloud product that we use for sort of dashboards and interactive visuals. And you can now see how this is a screenshot from the dashboard where there's multiple notes. So this was about the Dodgers when they played in the World Series, again, 2020. And there's a couple notes about Clayton Kershaw, who's a starting pitcher in this game. So therefore his notes are scored higher. Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts. And you have the ability to then rank them by different criteria, filter them to by position or stat, and then again look in more detail here about who else ranked around the player in a certain statistic. So this again was a really good proof of concept. We showed how there's this idea of having some insights and how can we scale those insights using Cloud Tool. Again, particular in this case was BigQuery. So moving on to the next sort of topic where Google Cloud and Major League Baseball were able to collaborate on a project that would influence how fans engage with the game. We focused on this year, this was in 2021, the concept of digital engagement with MLB players. So what do we mean by that? Well, players there's many players who participate in baseball. There's 30 teams. There's about 40 players per team on the active roster. So you get over 1,000 players. And of course, some come and go throughout the season or over the course of many seasons. And you have your most popular players, but you also have players who sort of peak at different times for different reasons. So you can see here on the top, based on a sort of digital engagement metric that involves how much time spent fans are experiencing with the player, maybe their player page, or how often they're searching for them or finding them in other places, both on MLB properties and offline as well. And what you'll see here is that this was in April for the first month of the regular season. Miguel Cabrera, who's a popular player who's been around for several years, had an opening day home run. On that day, he was the most digital engagement had the most digital engagement of the 4 players here. But then another player who was traded to the Yankees actually peaked on this day. And then another player, Carlos Rodon, who threw a no-hitter, peaked on the day he threw the no-hitter and the day after, right? Fans are much more likely to engage with his content because he just had an amazing performance. On the other hand, Shohei Ohtani, who many of you may know is now the MVP of this season from the Los Angeles Angels, he was traditionally ahead of everyone here, and then on some of his really good performances, like when he struck out 9 and scored 3 runs, right? What makes him amazing? He's both a great pitcher and a great batter. is that he was ahead on most days, and if we extend this out the rest season, he was usually ahead of all these people. He was one of the most digital engagement players. But you can see there's some dynamic aspects here that kind of come and go. So what actually makes these players interesting to fans? Is it historical performance? Is it what they do day to day? Is it how popular they are on social media? Is it how popular their fan base is, right? Do players who are on big market teams like the Yankees or the Dodgers, do they generally do better in digital engagement than similar players on the smaller market teams? So this was a question that Major League Baseball had, that we, Google thought was interesting, and we did a bunch of work to organize data around this. But then we went one more step, right? So it's one thing if, maybe a couple of data scientists at MLB working with us, or a couple of us wanted to work on this. But this actually fit for a sort of a larger crowdsourced question where we could learn a lot about digital engagement through a different method. So if you're not familiar with Kaggle is a Google, it is a company that was acquired by Google several years ago. And it's the world's largest sort of data science and machine learning community. It has over 5 million members and tens of thousands of open data sets, uploaded sort of notebooks, ways to learn about data science in the context of really specific problems. One of the things they have are these these competitions where commercial and research organizations provide data and then they host a predictive problem for people to solve. Like, hey, can we measure or predict digital engagement on a daily basis with MLB players? And therefore, a community of users, come in and they'll create algorithms to predict the targets. And what makes it interesting is that they are then scored on a live leaderboard. So you submit your code and your predictions, and you get scored, and you see where you're at, and then you can get better and better. And this competition runs usually for several weeks or a couple months. And as you try to improve the algorithms, you can see if you're getting better and if the rest of the sort of competitors are doing even more or doing better than you, or how can you catch up with them. And then the organization sort of hosting the competition will provide money, right, to the top performers. So they're incentivized by money. The organization benefits because they get the winning algorithms and sort of the code and learnings around that. So they can get a good answer to their question, something they might even be able to put into production by making this question and putting the data out there to the community. So as you can guess here, what we did was we ran a competition. This was over the course of the summer in the United States, June and July, which was the Digital Engagement Forecasting Competition. You'll see the screenshot from the end here, so this is a little bit of a spoiler. There's about $50,000 in prize money. These top 3 teams, in terms of predictions, you see in the green, were the ones who got first, second, and third prize there. And they were out of 850 teams. More than 850 teams submitted code. This was a code competition. The idea was you built your models on past data, but then you used it to submit the code so that every day in August, as games played out, your code would say, hey, who should be the most digital engagement? And then we would use that to predict, see what the actual digital engagement metrics were, and see who's the most accurate. You'll see the score here. Lower is better because this is like an error. You want the predictions that are closest to the actual results. And what we learned was that some metrics, so there was 4 different digital engagement metrics, and what was interesting here is different sort of predictors mattered for different metrics. So some of them were more correlated with how a player was doing day to day. So if you had a home run on a given day, there's more sort of people were engaging with the content related to that player. And then other metrics were more predicted by these longer term sort of how popular is the player on social media or how popular is their team. So we actually saw that different things mattered for different metrics. And the winning teams, again, the ones you see in green there, including one that was well-named Auto MLB, they created many features from the different data provided, different lags of variables and what happened in the game and how popular is the team. And then they used different ML, in this case, machine learning algorithms like XGBoost and things like that to make these accurate predictions. And MLB, the host of this competition, they found this useful because it will help them in terms of programming some of their content pages, right? They want to know what content is likely to do well with people. Well, now if you know, with fans, I should say, if you know how fans have reacted in the past to this large corpus of content, you can start building this model in and then programming your pages accordingly. So you can see the value here of kind of coming up with the right data, but then also using a different way to kind of find a solution that doesn't just rely on your own sort of expertise, but you can get a large community working on your problem. Okay, so the last topic I want to get into is a product called Film Room. So MLB has, like we said, a ton of data, but it also has a lot of video. So in particular, there's many Major League Baseball games. Again, we talked about 2,500 a year in a full season, regular season, and in each of those games has many pitches. So MLB has come up with a technology that will clip off every single pitch of a game, every single sort of event on the field. And if you can put that data and video together, you can create this amazing video archive of every play. And they've done this for the last 5 or 6 years. You can actually go and find several, sort of any pitch you want from any past game. And again, this is what's called Film Room. You'll see it says powered by Google Cloud. It starts with the StatCast data, or at least one of the starting points is the StatCast data, right? Where you have tracking the players and the ball throughout the games, measuring various aspects of the gameplay. How fast was the pitch? How far did the home run go? How strong was, how fast was the fielder's throw to get a good player out, something like that. And then they use tools like Anthos to enable sort of hybrid cloud, right? Some resources are deployed at the ballpark, right? That's not technically in the cloud, but you can use the same sort of control plane for those as the resources that are fully in the cloud. And then GKE, Kubernetes Engine, is a tool that MLB makes use of to automate the clip production. How do we get the videos from every play in baseball and get them fast so that they're available to fans in this film room, in this film room product? So again, you see watch, create, and share. What this allows you to do is now, once we get the videos into Film Room, again, a cloud-hosted sort of video archive, it's a smart archive though, right? You can now search by player, by team, by various criteria. Again, do I want to see the fastest pitches from a certain pitcher? Do I want to see long home runs, grand slams? These are things you can look up. And what you can see here is you can then create your own reel. So here's an example where a fan of Fernando Tatis Jr., a really popular player on the Padres, wants to make a reel of his leadoff home runs. So you can do that, sort of go through some of these clips by searching on Film Room, and then you can string them together and make your own reel. And then you can see here, you can share that on social media to sort of your friends and the general community who also may find your clip really interesting. So what we've done is create sort of this personalized, again, highlight reel using Google Cloud tools and MLB's, sort of great archive of video. It has video in past seasons as well beyond the last few, but in the last few is extremely comprehensive, so you can essentially look up almost anything you want. All right, so let's wrap up here and just kind of make sure we recap what we learned. So we had these 3 different things, right? We talked about automated game notes, which was about scaling statistical insights. We talked about a catalog competition, which was around understanding fan interest in MLB players on a day-to-day basis. And then we talked about Film Room, which was this sort of ultimate video archive, which gives fans access to video in a way like they never had before that allows them to experience baseball sort of on their own time in their own way. All 3 are powered, of course, by different Google Cloud tools. So you can see here, it's the sort of the cloud tools allow this reach, the scale of technology that previously wasn't there before, and now we have fan experience that again are more modern and set up for the future, sort of the future of sports fandom. These are all using baseball examples, but as you can see, these would generalize to multiple sports. As long as you have data, and then with the technology, you can really imagine all sorts of different fan experiences that could be made going forward. So thank you again for your time. I really appreciate you having me. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or at my email address listed on this screen. And I look forward to chatting with you more in the future.